G'day, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube land, Roknot here with another collections video. This video is actually outlining my biggest collection, well, biggest franchise collection in my Final Fantasy games. I have been collecting Final Fantasy games for as long as I can remember. I absolutely love the Final Fantasy franchise. I played the original as a kid and I actually beat it as a kid. And I have beaten a number of the Final Fantasy games here on the shelf. Some of them I still haven't played, but we're going to change that soon. Alright, so let's start with what's in the back here. We got the official Final Fantasy Strategy Guide for Final Fantasy VII. The Sky, which is the box art, or which is the art of Final Fantasy. Over here we have Final Fantasy Anthology Official Strategy Guide and Final Fantasy XII Official Guide behind there. I got that from Fred in Lakefield. Great guy, vintage video game booth. Check him out at 25 Williams Street in Lakefield. He's open every Sunday from 9 to 4. Check him out. My mom bought me that for Christmas, and I got those. I got number 12 guide from my buddy Kyle, and I got that from my buddy Anita. Alright, so let's start with what's up here. We've got the original Final Fantasy, complete in box. My wife actually bought that for me off eBay. I think she paid, $30 for it. If you look at it now, I think it goes for 90 to 100. She bought that for me a number of years ago. She also bought this one for me on eBay as well. Also complete in box. Now the box has seen better days, as you can see. But again, I think she paid $30 for this one as well. Plus shipping, of course. Then we've also got Final Fantasy Tactics on the Game Boy Advance. It's the only Final Fantasy game that actually, it's not the only one, but it's one of the few games that's only card only. This is actually an extra disc of the Final Fantasy Chronicles, Final Fantasy IV. Disc has a few light surface scratches, but it never leaves that spot. So, yeah, let's start over here. We've got my 25th anniversary Final Fantasy Chocobo, which I got from Retro Replay in Cambridge. They're on Aisley Street there, Aisley Street South, I believe. Check them out. Fantastic guys there. They got excellent deals. Make sure you check them out. They're also going to be at the VCCG Game Swap on March 29th, so make sure to check them out. That's in Waterloo, Ontario. Check it out. Also up here is the Final Fantasy VII. It's a demo disc. It's got a bunch of games on there. And then one of my newest additions to my collection, Final Fantasy XII Reverent Wings. Then we'll start over here with the newer Final Fantasy games. We've got Final Fantasy Lightning Returns, Final Fantasy 13. I got that from Target, where they had the buy two get one free. That was my free game. Final Fantasy X-2. I bought retail. Final Fantasy 13 again bought retail. Dredge of Cerberus, Final Fantasy VII. I got that in a deal with the Final Fantasy XII guide from my buddy. No, sorry, hold on. I got this copy, actually in my PS1, PS2 Epic video game pickup video. You can check that out. It was a total of, I believe, 98 games, 2 consoles. I paid $70, and that was one of the games in the collection, as well as this copy of Final Fantasy XII. This copy of Final Fantasy XII, the collector's edition, is the steel tin. It is still factory sealed. I got that from my wife for my birthday when it came out. Final Fantasy X-2 and Final Fantasy X I bought those about a week after my wife bought me a PS2. Well, that was when she was my girlfriend. Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. I got that in a I got that in a game trade deal. I did a trade with a reseller in Peterborough named Scott. I traded him a few things and some cash, and I got that, and I got Ocarina of Time on the N64, and then Dissidia 012 and Dissidia I got in a deal with my buddy Kyle. Final Fantasy 2, I bought that from... Did I buy that? Yeah, I guess I bought that from Iceman for $20. Iceman Video Games here in town. I bought that to play on the road when I was playing my PSP a lot. Final Fantasy 3, my wife bought that for me for Father's Day last year. And Final Fantasy 5 Advanced, I bought that for myself a number of years ago when I used to work at a local bingo hall. I used to play that when I was working double shifts and just staying at work. Skip over these guys again. And this box here would be my Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, but it's actually my Super Nintendo right now because I've been playing that. I got that from Iceman. Final Fantasy 3 on the Super Nintendo, as well as the book there. And actually this laminated map. It's not the actual map, but it is a map of the Final Fantasy 3 world. Just like the actual map, it is reversible. So you've got the World of Balance and the World of Ruin. Fantastic game. Absolutely love it. And if you guys haven't seen my top 10 video games of all time, check it out. It is in that list. I got Final Fantasy 3 off eBay. My wife did. I think she paid $20 for the game with the manual and that map. And then Final Fantasy Tactics I got in the Epic PS1, PS2 pickup, as well as actually this Final Fantasy 9. I've actually owned that since its release date. That is my original copy of Final Fantasy 9. It is complete and in amazing condition. I love this game. One of my favorite Final Fantasy games of all time. Final Fantasy 7. This is also from that... Or sorry, Final Fantasy 8. This isn't my original copy. My original copy was the Greatest Hits. I bought this from a guy in Peterborough. It came with... I forgot an item. My Final Fantasy VIII strategy guide. It just made me remember that. I bought that with the guide from a guy in Peterborough for $15. So not a bad deal. Final Fantasy VII, that came to me in a PS2 deal. I think it came 17 games. I got it all for $50. So I was really happy to get that. Final Fantasy Anthology. This isn't the original copy I got from my friend Anita. My friend Anita sold me one that was Greatest Hits. I got this one from my buddy Kyle. So then I traded... I ended up trading the Greatest Hits version. And then we've got Final Fantasy Chronicles. It's also complete. Got that from my buddy Kyle as well. And last but not least, Final Fantasy Origins, which is Final Fantasy and Final Fantasy II. This is my original copy, as you can see, that I bought from EB Games when it was released for $35. And I love this game. Now, unfortunately, when I bought this game, I did not realize at the time, because I was into Final Fantasy, but I didn't realize there was discrepancies, that the Final Fantasy II on this disc is not that Final Fantasy II. That this Final Fantasy II is Final Fantasy IV on this disc. I did not know that. So those of you out there that also aren't aware, when Final Fantasy games were being released for the Super Nintendo, they decided that North Americans weren't ready for the original Final Fantasy II and Final Fantasy III, so they released Final Fantasy IV as Final Fantasy II in North America, and Final Fantasy VI as Final Fantasy III in North America. So the Final Fantasy Anthology number 6 and number 3 on Super Nintendo are the same game, essentially. And Final Fantasy IV on Chronicles and Final Fantasy II on Super Nintendo are the same game, essentially. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, well, that is it for the Final Fantasy shelf. Quite a bit of goodness there. Absolutely one of my favorite franchises of all time, although, you know, with the last few games there, they've kind of taken a plunge. Unfortunately, I don't own a PS4 or an Xbox One, so it's going to be a while before I get the next Final Fantasy release. I know there are a bunch of Final Fantasy games I'm still missing, but I am on the lookout for them. Again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy day today to watch my video. I greatly appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed the look at my Final Fantasy collection. It's not the biggest collection on the planet, but it's one of my favorites. And as always, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, then subscribe. Stay up to date with all of my new videos. I try to post a video once a week. Unfortunately, life has been just too busy lately with a bunch of real-life appointments for me and my family, and not being able to do as much game hunting as I would like, and just really not having a whole lot of extra time. So I do appreciate your guys' patience with me on getting videos out. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you very much for taking the time to watch my video. I greatly appreciate it. Leave a comment in the section below about what other things you want to see from my channel. I'm thinking of doing some interesting items in my collection video soon, but we'll see. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much again for your time. Have a good one.